and youth-created events for children and teens or lobby. These projects often involved unstructured challenges as well as emotional and motivational obstacles. Now, research hasn't yet been done to test whether programs influence the navigational skills I'm interested in, but research has shown impacts on more general measures, such as school achievement, with the strongest effects for low-income youth. In a meta-analysis, Durlock et al. Found effect sizes averaging 0.31 for socio-emotional skills in programs that had met certain criteria of high quality. So in our research that I'm going to use as kind of the jumping off point, we selected high quality programs with the sort of audacious idea that we could see youth's development in process. Let me give you just the bare bones information on this research. First of all, here are some of the wonderful people who were in the study, and we're enormously grateful to the William T. Grant Foundation. The programs we studied were in working class and poor neighborhoods in Chicago, as well as downstate Illinois. It was a longitudinal qualitative study in which we followed experiences over the natural course of youth projects. In each program, we selected about 10 youth. You can see a very diverse sample. We interviewed them at regular intervals, and then we conducted systematic, grounded theory analysis of the 10,000 pages of transcripts with the goal of understanding the learning process as experienced by the youth. So this is theory development. It's not testing or evaluation. I'm going to discuss the development of agency skills in this one type of context. My focus is on general patterns. I'm not going to talk about individual differences, gender, ethnicity, or SES, and I can't claim these patterns would apply to every youth. Certainly many youth face very serious problems, and I'm not suggesting positive development is a magical cure-all. I'm also not going to say much on the important roles played by leaders, except at the very end. The focus is on youth's conscious developmental experiences over time as they work on their projects. Okay, so let's start with emotional development. Let me just ask you a question. How many of you feel like you understand your emotions and pretty much can manage them? Okay, well, it looks like we have a few sadhus in the room, but it's not an easy problem. And, Immanuel Kant described emotions as diseases of the mind. As I said, they can disrupt work and derail agency, and adolescents may be especially prone to these goals. Yet, Darwin and current emotion psychologists view emotions as innate systems that serve important functions to help us navigate the disorderly world. They arouse and direct energy and attention towards important goals. They promote and regulate social interaction. They provide useful information with and assist with healthy decision-making, though they can also mislead. So emotions can disrail and mislead, but they also have important functions. So for adolescents, emotions are really challenging puzzles. And I should say as an aside that even leading researchers that study emotions consider them to be quite puzzling. They're abstract, they can be private or repressed or faked. They have peculiar dynamics. They can mess with your perception and reasoning. Figuring out these peculiar dynamics, I'm going to suggest, is an important developmental task of adolescence shaped by evolution. In contrast to species with fixed action patterns, which dictate an organism's response to a given situation, emotions in humans are clearly designed to allow our big brains the opportunity for cognitive mediation of emotional episodes, for us to develop knowledge, skills, and cultural understandings that shape when we experience anger or joy or anxiety in response to complex situations in mature ways related to our goals, though a lot of us never fully get there. So adolescence provides the opportunity for learning, I think, advanced skills, or starting to learn advanced skills for mediating or steering through complex real-world situations in which emotions are in the mix. Our field unfortunately, hasn't had much to contribute on this topic. The recent Handbook of Emotional Regulation has 5 chapters on emotional development, but not a single citation in the index on adolescence. Now, maybe they missed it, but in terms of positive emotional development, I think there's not that much out there. So what can adolescents learn, and how do they learn it? Youth programs are a good context to study this because youth are working on something and they experience a lot of emotional episodes during their projects, including episodes of negative emotion, anger at others, especially when their peers screw up or have different ideas than theirs, anxiety about outcomes, unhappiness, as well as a lot of happiness when things go well, when they succeed at things. Now, we published a study of the emotions during rehearsals for a production of Les Miserables, and these positive and negative emotional episodes were common. But the adult directors had cultivated a program culture in which emotions were acknowledged, accepted, talked about, and dealt with. As a result, these different episodes tended to play out according to fairly predictable, fairly happy scenarios. Negative emotions, often conflict with peers, were met with support for dealing with and understanding them. Positive emotions, often exhilaration from doing well, were reinforced. And we shamelessly borrowed from attachment theory and theorized that the program provided a predictable matrix of emotional experience that might facilitate youth's emotional learning. And indeed, across all the 11 programs we studied, they reported learning a lot about emotions. I'm not saying they conquered the emotion puzzles, but they described making progress. So what did they learn? First, across all programs, they gained knowledge about the unfolding of emotional episodes, including the causes or antecedents of those episodes, such as personalities, physical states, types of situations. Second, they learned strategies for managing negative emotions. And this list, I skipped. Okay. In addition to the causes, they learned about the effects, okay? So we're talking about an episode. You got this set of things cause it, this sort of things come out of it. So they learned about managing negative emotions, and this is pretty familiar from the coping research. We do know a lot about emotions in adolescence. And those first two were particularly common. There was a lot of learning to limit expression and persevere through situations because the goals of the work were more important than this other kid disagreeing with you. The play must go on. They also learned about managing positive emotions, not just to control them, but to use them for motivation. Emotions aren't just diseases to be quashed. Some youth reported quite sophisticated learning. This is Consuelo from a program where they painting murals to be hung. And she said, and she had a lot of frustration and anger. And at the very end, we asked her what she learned about emotions, and she said, you learn how to take them in and then let them go. I guess we just took them in and understood them. There's something you shouldn't dwell on because they're not going to last forever. Kind of a Zen acceptance. I really like that. Take it in, understand it, let it go. Boy, I wish I could do that. Okay, so what developed? Youth were gaining knowledge of emotional episodes as somewhat predictable processes, interactions between situations and self, and they were developing executive skills for shaping these processes as best they could in ways that serve the goals of the project. Now, the next question is, how did youth learn? What were the developmental processes? Across the 11 programs, youth attributed their learning most of the time to themselves. A few times they gave credit to adult leaders for being role models or providing emotion coaching. And leaders clearly had important roles that they didn't mention, like cultivating this emotion-friendly culture at Les Mis. But youth most often attributed their learning to their own, I saw that, I discovered that, and sometimes as a group, we realized that. So the thought process involved observation and analysis. They compared emotion in one situation to another and between themselves and others, they appear to draw then